Hey everyone, welcome back to Sew in Love 25 with another simple sewing project for you to try. This is a baby burp cloth. This is the finished product here. It is made with 100% cotton flannel on both sides, and then it also has a piece of batting on the inside. This is cut out here just to go on your shoulder, just like that. So, I actually purchased some baby receiving blankets. It's 100% cotton flannel. The edges are serged, but that's not a big deal. We're just going to cut around that. So to start, I'm just going to bring up my fabric, just like this. Now, if you're lucky enough to know somebody with a 3D printer, they can print your patterns for you. So I actually drew it out. I got it to the size that I liked. And then I passed it on to my boyfriend, who put it in his program and actually 3D printed me a pattern. I have my folded edge marked there. So I'm just going to lay that on the fold of my fabric, and then I'm just going to trace around it. Have some heat erasable pens here. So going around this piece of plastic is actually much easier than trying to follow the paper pattern. So after I have that traced, I'm going to take that off of there. And then I'm just going to cut that piece out. So I have cut out, this is where my fold was. This is the shape here of my pattern. And when I open it up, I have one piece ready to go. So now we're just going to do that with whatever side or whatever fabric we want on the back side. I now have my back side of my baby burp cloth laid out. I've got my pattern down. I've got my fold up against the fold of my fabric. And again, I'm just going to trace around that fabric. And then I'm going to cut this piece out. So now I've got my back side also cut out. So we have our back and our front. And now we need to cut out our batting. This is just a scrap piece I had. Again, I have that folded in half. I'm going to put down my template. And when I'm tracing on my batting, I like to use a Sharpie. Which seems to work a little better for me. I'm going to go all the way around that. And then I'm going to cut that piece out. Now it's time to put these together so that we can sew this baby burp cloth together. So I'm going to start with my batting down first. I'm going to put my front over top of my batting. And then I'm going to take my back side and put it pretty side to pretty side, just like that. Going to flip all the way around to hold it in place. And because when we sew, we do everything from the outside in, I'm going to mark an approximate 3-inch hole there so that I can turn my project right side out after it's all sewn together. So now we are ready to head to the sewing machine. I have white thread in my machine. can see my start and my stop so that I can remember to leave that hole open. If I don't do that, I will just keep sewing every single time. I actually like to start at my first mark there. I actually like to do about a 1/2 inch seam allowance on this, and I'll show you why here in a minute. So I'm going to go ahead and start with my first couple of stitches. I want to back stitch because I want that nice and tight when I go to flip my project. So I'm just going to go all the way around, leaving that hole open. Try to take my corners nice and slow. Staying with that 1/2 inch seam allowance. All the way around till we get back to our stopping point. To the corner, I'm going to lift my presser foot up, bring it back down, and continue with my 1/2 inch seam allowance. I like to do a 1/2 inch on these just so that I know everything catches. Sometimes my fabric can get a little off or a little wonky, so I know if I stick with a 1/2 inch that I'm good to go. To the top, lift, bring it back down. And as we are coming back around, we're going to remember to stop there. Put in some back stitches and cut our thread. My next step is to trim off all this excess, and for that I like to use my rotary blade. I like to use the pinking shear one just to help with unraveling. I know it's on the inside, but I think it really does make a difference. I also put a different type of cutting thing down because I don't want those marks on my mat. So I'm going to start up here. And when you're doing this, you want to stay as close as you can to your stitch line without getting into your stitch line. So I'm just going to take this and go all the way around. And then that is all nice and cleaned up around those edges. Now it's time to flip our project right side out. We are very close to being done. So we want to take that hole that we left open and we want to just start turning that project right side out. So I'm just pushing everything back through that hole, and then I'm just going to take my hand in there. This is where I'm always inspecting to make sure that everything caught and that seam is nice and secure. I'm going to do all of this by hand first. And then I'm going to take my little turning tool. I'm going to go up into those corners there. Do not use your scissors. Up into this corner so that So it's nice and flat up there around my corner. Okay, so now it's all turned right side. What I do is I kind of take my fingers along the sides like this in that seam and just kind of work them back and forth because I want that fabric. Once I do my top stitch around there, I want to make sure that's all nice and even. Just gonna make sure those seams are all tucked nice. And then once we get back to where our turning hole is, we are going to fold them in together. Cut that little stray thread off of there. And we're going to line them up nice and straight. And I'm going to put a clip on it. Now I'm going to take mine over to my ironing board and I'm just going to kind of press down around the edges there just to kind of get those seams nice and flat. Now that I've pressed all the way around my edges to kind of flatten down a little bit of that bulk that's in there, all that's left to do is top stitch this and this is done. I actually like to start just above where my turning hole is. And we're going to do about 1/8 of an inch or just before we fall off our fabric. Start. I'm going to do those couple of back stitches and then I'm just going to sew all the way around. Staying right on the edge of that fabric about 1/8 of an inch. Slow it down, going around my corners. To this corner, I like to stop, lift my presser foot, back down, back to my starting point. I'm gonna back stitch, cut my thread, and I'm going to trim off my little threads back here because nobody wants to see those. And easy enough, we have a baby burp cloth. Now, you could also embroider your flannel before you assemble this and even personalize it for the special little baby in your life. If you enjoyed this video and found it helpful, please like and subscribe and follow me further on my sewing journey.